welcome to Sammy's Bookshelf. Today I'm going to be recommending you some cutesy contemporary romance books. Sometimes after reading 1,000 fantasies in a row, you just need something easy and fun and cute to read. The first book I have is Geekerella by Poston. This book was really popular a couple of years ago when it was first released, but I haven't seen a lot of people talking about it recently, so I thought that I would recommend it to you. As you can probably tell from the title, this is a Cinderella retelling, but make it nerd edition. It follows a girl named Al who is a huge fan of the series Starfield, and she wants to win this cosplay contest because if she wins, she gets invited to ExcelsiCon, and then she can go to the ExcelsiCon cosplay ball. It also follows a boy named Darian who has been cast to play the lead role in the Starfield reboot movies, and he's trying to convince die-hard fans like Al that he is serious about the role and he's not just another heartthrob. Al and Darian end up exchanging text messages after Darian replies to Al's scathing blog post about the new Starfield reboot movies, more specifically about the casting of Darian as the lead role. And of course, they end up falling in love. As someone who is a fan of books and also a fan of a lot of other things that may be considered nerdy, I related so much to the character of Al and her enthusiasm about Starfield. And I love the text message chains we get to see between Al and Darian. Their romance is so cute. And Geekerella is actually part of a companion trilogy. I believe the whole trilogy is called Once Upon a Con, and each book is a different fairy tale retelling that is essentially a love letter to being a nerd. So if you're a fan of fairy tale retellings, especially Cinderella retellings, I would very highly recommend this book. It is super cute and so great. Next I have the Sky Blues by Robbie Couch, which I believe this is Robbie Couch's debut novel, and what a great debut novel it was. This is about a boy named Sky who has planned to propose to his crush Ali at his small town's annual beach bum party. But things do not go as planned, as a homophobic e-blast is sent to everyone in the town, revealing Sky's secret crush on Ali and his big proposal ideas 30 days before the beach bum party. But Sky and his group of friends are determined to not let this ruin their senior year, so they use their 30 remaining days to solve the mystery of who sent out the homophobic e-blast and expose them to the whole town. This was such a fun and heartfelt story. I think the highlight of the story for me was Sky's friendship with his friend group. They always just have his back and are so supportive of one another. I also love all the pop culture references in this book. I think multiple times they reference to All the Boys I've Loved Before, and I think they also reference Love, Simon. I also loved watching Sky and his friends try to solve the mystery of who sent out the e-blast. I love a good mystery that we get to solve in a book. This book was so much fun, so heartfelt. I loved the characters. I highly recommend it. Happily Ever Afters by Elise Bryant. This is about a girl named Tessa who is a romance writer, and she writes romances with protagonists who look like her. She often doesn't see herself reflected in the pages of the romance books she reads. And the only person who she shares her writing with is her best friend, Caroline. But Tessa is accepted into a writing course at a very prestigious art school. But when Tessa gets to her first class, she is hit with a bad case of writer's block. With the looming possibility that Tessa could fail her novel writing class, Tessa needs to find her words again, and Caroline decides that the best way to do this is for Tessa to experience her own love story, straight from the pages of her own romance novels. Tessa sets her sights on Nico, an artsy boy in her novel writing class who she has a huge crush on and is seemingly the perfect Prince Charming. But things get a little more complicated than she originally thought, as she also starts to grow feelings for her sweet next door neighbor Sam. One of the aspects that I really enjoyed about this book was the art school that Tessa gets to go to. Like, I was super jealous because I want to go to that school. I also love the character of Tessa and the journey that she goes through in finding herself and finding the people that she wants to be around who make her a better person and make her a person that she is proud of. Tessa also struggles a lot with anxiety, which I felt like was written really well, and it's definitely relatable as she often struggles with nervousness when it comes to sharing her writing with others in her class. I just understood so much how daunting it can be to share your art and creativity with others. If you're looking for a cutesy romance with a really relatable main character, I highly recommend this book. Next, I'm going to be recommending a Colleen Hoover book, but don't worry, this is one of Colleen Hoover's happier books, and that is Maybe Someday. This is definitely Colleen Hoover's least sad book, so if you're looking to get into Colleen Hoover but you don't want to start with a book that will emotionally traumatize you, then Maybe Someday is a great book to start with. It's actually the first Colleen Hoover book that I read. This is about a girl named Sydney who lives with her boyfriend, but one day she discovers that her boyfriend is cheating on her with her best friend. With no place to stay, Ridge, who is our other main character who lives opposite Sydney, offers to let her stay in his apartment. But in exchange, Sydney has to help him write songs for his band, as he has had a bad case of writer's block and he has noticed that Sydney has some talent for music and lyric writing. But obviously things become more complicated as Ridge and Sydney start to grow feelings for each other. My favourite part about this book by far is that Colleen Hoover actually worked with musician Griffin Peterson, who wrote a bunch of songs that coincide with the book, and they're actually the songs that Ridge and Sydney write in the book. And the lyrics are actually in this book, so every time they play the song, you can listen to the song that Griffin Peterson wrote and read along with the lyrics. And there's even a QR code at the beginning of the book so that you don't have to search for the soundtrack, you can just scan the code. So if you're a fan of listening to music while you read, I would highly recommend this book. You will have so much fun actually listening to songs that were written for this book. The soundtrack is such a fun way and unique way to tell this story. It adds such a unique aspect to the storytelling of this book. I know personally that I still listen to the soundtrack all the time, even though it's been years since I've read this book. Like, the songs are actually a bop. And if you go on or have read Ugly Love or November 9, Griffin Peterson also wrote songs for those books as well. The songs aren't integrated into the story like Maybe Someday, but they still are about the characters and the story, and so it's a lot of fun to listen to them after you've read the book. The romance between Ridge and Sydney is so great, and Colleen Hoover has written a lot of great supporting characters in this book. There is also a novella called Maybe Not, which follows two of the supporting characters that we see in Maybe Someday. And there is also now a sequel called Maybe Now, which I believe Colleen Hoover started writing on Wattpad and then eventually published it. Maybe Someday is definitely a lot better than Maybe Now, but if you really loved the characters and got really attached, then there's also a sequel, so if you want to stay with these characters for a little longer, but you definitely can read Maybe Someday as just a standalone. You don't have to read the sequel to get a satisfying end. Next, I have London Belongs to Me by Jacquelyn Middleton. This is about a girl named Alex who is an aspiring playwright. So after college or university, she decides to move to London, a city that she has idolized her whole life, to pursue her dream, and also to escape some demons that she left behind in America. While in London, she meets Irish actor Mark Keegan, and she starts to also have feelings for him. This book is a super fun read, especially if you love all things London. It's always a nice change of pace to read books that aren't just set in America, and it's also fun to see London from an outside perspective of someone who is just moving there. This book has funny moments, it has sad moments, heartfelt moments. You really grow attached to these characters throughout this book. And there's also a second book called London Can You Wait, which is also really good. And I also really enjoyed Alex's journey to discovering herself and her place in the world after graduating from university. I think having to figure out your place in the world after studying and being a student for so long is really relatable and something that we all have to go through. So it was really fun and insightful to go on this journey with Alex. Disclaimer, this book will make you want to do an impromptu move to London. My next recommendation is My Life Next Door by Huntley Fitzpatrick. This is about a girl named Samantha who envies the family who lives next door. They are loud, messy, and affectionate. Everything Samantha's mother despises. But one day, a boy from next door named Jace, who is her age, introduces himself and invites her to come over and make Samantha one of his family's own. And of course, they begin to fall in love. But a disastrous accident leads Samantha to have to pick between her mother or Jace, and her relationship with Jace is put in jeopardy. Something that makes this book a little different from other contemporaries is that instead of the main characters getting together right at the end of the book, and we hardly get to see them actually be a couple, Jace and Samantha get get together very early on in the book, like in the first act, and we get to see them grow as a couple throughout the novel. And don't get me wrong, I love a slow burn romance, but Jace and Samantha's romance and their relationship was a really nice change of pace. I also really love Jace's big family. Huntley Fitzpatrick did a really great job of fleshing out each of Jace's siblings, and as a reader, I felt like I was part of this family, and I cared about each member of this family just as much as Samantha does, which is weird to say because my name is Samantha. But anyway, there's also a companion novel which follows two of the supporting characters in My Life Next Door. I haven't read it yet, but I'm sure it is just as adorable as My Life Next Door. The next book I am recommending is multiple books. I have I Owe You One by Sophie Kinsella up now, but this kind of represents all the Sophie Kinsella books that I have read so far. I love Sophie Kinsella's books. If you are a fan of rom-coms, you will definitely love Sophie Kinsella. This particular book, I Owe You One, is about a girl who does a favor for a man who she meets in a coffee shop, and they end up going back and forth exchanging IOUs, and of course they end up falling in love. Another book that I would highly recommend is Can You Keep a Secret? This is about a girl who, after hitting some turbulence on a business flight, she ends up telling the man sitting next to her all of her secrets, including some pretty embarrassing ones. But lo and behold, she gets to work the next day, and the man that she spewed all her secrets to ends up being her new boss. And finally, one more Sophie Kinsella book I want to recommend is I've Got Your Number. This is about a girl who loses her engagement ring, and in a flurry to try and find it, she also ends up having her phone stolen. But she ends up finding a random stranger's phone, and her and the stranger ends up connecting and exchanging text messages. Sophie Kinsella's books, especially Can You Keep a Secret and I've Got Your Number, are the funniest books I have ever read. And I'm not the kind of person to laugh out loud at books often, but Sophie Kinsella's books are so hilarious. Also, all of Sophie Kinsella's books are set in England, so if you read one of her books and you don't read all the dialogue in a British accent, you're reading it wrong. All the jokes, all the humour is so much better in a British accent. So that's all the books that I have to recommend you today. Hopefully you found some books to add to your TBR. Let me know what some of your favourite contemporary books are, and I'll see you next time. Bye!